This episode is brought to you by Hostfully. Using Hostfully, you can create a free digital guidebook for your listing so that you can save time creating a professional experience for every guest that comes and visits your spot. Learn more at hostfully.com.
Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.
What's up, everybody? Get Paid for Your Pad, episodes 269. First of all, I have to apologize. I didn't get to publish a podcast episode last week. Life got in the way, but now I am back. And today's topic of the podcast is my apartment in Cali in Colombia. I've been getting a lot of questions from people. It sounds like a lot of people have been following sort of along the story of when I bought the penthouse, and people know that since August I've been renting it out, and people are curious to know what the results are. So this whole podcast is dedicated to that. I'm going to share all the results, the numbers, what happened, and there's some interesting things happen. So there's definitely some stuff to share, some good stuff, some not so good stuff. It's all in there. So. If you're interested in how this project is going, then keep listening. And who better to invite on the podcast than Patrick Spanvelner, who manages my property in Cali. He's the man on the ground, and he's also the manager of Life Afar, which is the company that helped me purchase this unit in the first place. So, Patrick, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing great, Jasper. Thank you for having me.
How's life in Cali? I haven't been since July last year, so it's been 7 or 8 months since I've been there. I and you as well. We both had a pretty good time when I was there.
But it's hard not to have it's hard not to have fun in Cali. This is if Medellin is the city of eternal spring, then Cali is the city of eternal summer. It's raining a little bit today, but we have a beautiful average temperature of about 32 degrees Celsius. And to those who've never been in Cali, it's a very tropical city, meaning that we have public palm trees and public mango trees and beautiful mountains. We're close to the Pacific coast, and people dress light. The people are pretty, and they like to celebrate and have fun. So the gastronomic scene, the party scene, the nightlife is amazing here, and I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I remember when I left in July, it took me about a week to recover from all the festivities that I took part of in Cali. So, what else can I say? But let's go back a little bit in time for those who haven't followed the whole story. I started Airbnb hosting back in 2012 in Amsterdam. I had a 2-bedroom apartment. And that apartment allowed me to travel the world and support myself. So that was all great. But then in 2017, I decided to sell my apartment because the city of Amsterdam had such strict regulations. I could only rent out my apartment for 60 days, which is obviously that's not enough. That's only 2 months. And so I decided to move my Airbnb business elsewhere. And I'd been traveling for a long time, so I already scoped out some potential locations, and I ended up buying 3 properties. And the first one is in Cali in Colombia. So that's the one that we're going to be talking about now. I purchased it in, I think it was April 2017, right after I sold my house. So I'd already prepared this before I sold my house. So April 2017, I bought it. It was a building in the top apartment in a building that has 4 floors, and Far International, or I think you guys are called Life Afar now, Patrick, right?
That is correct. We changed our name to Life Afar.
Okay, so Life Afar, previously known or formerly known as Far International, was the company that I had known since 2014. And I'd always been following kind of what they were up to, and they happened to have this building available in Cali. So I went over, I took a look, and it took me about 3 days to decide to buy the property. Actually, I remember you told me, Patrick, I was one of the quickest decision makers you've ever seen, right?
Well, you say 3 days. I thought it was like 15 minutes. I felt like you just walked in there and then you looked around, you stood up on the terrace, and then you say, yeah, I'll take it.
Okay, yeah, that was right. I mean, it's I tend to make decisions based on gut feeling, and so it felt good. But yeah, I mean, the property is awesome. I mean, it's located in a super fun neighborhood. I'd say the best neighborhood in Cali, or at least the most trendy one or up and coming. And the property is located just in the corner of that neighborhood on a little hill. And so you do have to walk up a little bit, which is keeps you young. But it's a small climb up the hill. But then also, the apartment being on the top floor, it just gives you an excellent view over the neighborhood, but not just the neighborhood, over the whole city, I would say. And so I immediately felt like, okay, having a terrace in such a great neighborhood overlooking the city, I mean, you can't really go wrong with that, right? So yeah, I decided very quickly.
Yeah, it's true. And not only that, like you said, it's an up-and-coming neighborhood, but it's also like a gastronomical, kind of a nightlife district. And you don't want to be right in the heart of the action. So this apartment, just being a few blocks away from the nightlife, is really an attractive feature because you get a quiet night's sleep. And I think that is something that do attract a lot of guests.
Absolutely. So just following along the timeline, April 2017, I bought it. Now, Life Afar was going to completely break down the whole building almost. I think the walls may have been the only thing that they kept, and they've completely rebuilt the whole building from the ground up. And so that means that it's essentially pretty much a completely new building. Right, Patrick?
Yeah, we found the building, and just to give you a little background story, it was a building with one title, meaning that there was one owner of this entire building with 4 apartments in it. And we purchased it and we subdivided it, meaning that we got 4 titles out of it. And that meant that we could sell each unit to a new buyer. But not only that, when we bought the entire building, we changed the homeowners association rules so that we allowed for short-term rentals, which is something that is not very common in Cali, at least. You can find that in Cartagena and many other tourism destinations around the world, but in Cali, this is not very, very common. And one of the disadvantages if you buy a beautiful apartment is in a residential neighborhood with a swimming pool and a gym and all of this, is that most of the neighbors will be very against having short-term tenants in the building. So one of the benefits of doing this through us or through the model that we use is that we kind of rezoned the building and allowed it for short-term rentals. And then we sold it to you, and you purchased it before renovation. And it took us about a year to renovate and furnish it, and we broke everything down. And like you said, we left just more or less just the principal walls of the building. So we changed the plumbing, like the hot and the cold water. We changed the electrical infrastructure. We changed all of the carpentry. We changed the floors. We changed the windows. We changed the roof. We actually raised the ceilings about 1 meter or so you have a very, very cool high ceilings in your apartment. And we changed the facade. We dug in under the building and we changed the foundation of the building. It was more or less just built on clay. So we dug all of that out and we poured a concrete foundation, and then we installed gas in the building. So yeah, you could say that was a pretty complete renovation.
Right, and it took you guys about 1 year to finish that project, a little bit over 1 year. I think it was ready early June, and that's when I visited. I went to Cali in June 2018, and I stayed at the property for about, I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks or so. There was a few things that weren't in order yet. For example, we had a lot of trouble with the internet. Right, you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember you posting pictures on Twitter in order to get the internet provider to deliver on time. It's let's just say that it is a common thing here in Latin America that they don't have that sense of urgency that we guys have. And also because you not being a resident in Colombia meant that we could not leave the internet plan in your name. So we had to put it in our name and we had to get signatures from Medellin, and it was a big mess. But we finally got it sorted out. and you got good and solid internet today. I'm happy to say.
Yeah, I remember that it took like it took a long time. It took like 2 or 3 weeks or something, and I figured out like you mentioned, I got a little impatient, and I've learned a few tricks here and there on the way in life, and I thought, okay, if I harass these people enough, then eventually they'll get sick of me and they'll give me my internet, right? So I found the Twitter account, and I started uploading pictures of something that's really slow. I remember uploading a picture of a guy with a really long beard. The beard reached almost the ground. And then I wrote the text in Spanish, something like, this is what happens when you're waiting for this company. I can't remember the name of the company, but for waiting for them to install the internet.
Chico Une.
Oh God! And I was even mentioning, like, I asked Patrick for the name of the actual contact person and the manager and everything, and I added them in the tweet on Twitter as well, so that they could see it, they could get a notification on their personal accounts. Anyway, eventually they did install the internet, and so that was good. And so end of July I left. And then the question was, okay, what are we going to do with this apartment? Are we going to put this on Airbnb now, or are we going to do something else with it now? At the time, I had a couple of friends that were actually visiting in Cali, and they really loved my apartment. So they were kind of begging me, like, can we please rent your apartment? And I'm a nice guy, I like to make people happy. So I decided to allow them to spend a couple months in the apartment, but it wasn't just generosity on my behalf. There was also a few other considerations. First of all, I felt like the water pressure in the building was a little bit low, which kind of makes sense because it is situated on a hill, and also my apartment was the top floor. But my philosophy is, once I start doing Airbnb, I want everything to be perfect. And that's also because I'm really targeting the higher end customer. We're charging about $120 on average for the apartment, which is quite high compared to other apartments in Cali. I mean, you can probably rent something for like $30-$40, but then you're not getting the rooftop or the terrace and the high quality furnishing.
Yeah, you can go as low as $15, to be honest. I mean, Cali market, there's definitely a low segment, a medium segment, and a high segment, and we're aiming for the premium clients. That's no secret.
Exactly. And so when you're aiming for premium clients, you need to provide a premium experience. That's what I believe. And so I felt like, with the water pressure not being so strong, I felt like, okay, I'm not able to deliver that premium experience yet. And so having a couple of friends who I know, who I trust, rent the apartment is obviously, it's gonna eat into the profits a little bit, because obviously they're not going to pay $120 a night when they're renting it for 2 months. But at the same time, I'll have some time to get some experience having people in the apartment, and who knows, maybe there's a couple other things missing. I think these two guys actually pointed out a few other things that were easily fixable. But who knows? Could have saved us a couple subpar reviews. And so that's how we started out. So I think August and September, or even October as well. I can't remember exactly now. We probably rented it to these guys for 3 months, didn't we?
Yeah, I think until late October, maybe even November 1st, I think your friends were there. And just a note on the water pressure. I mean, Jasper, you're one of our good friends and best investors. So actually, I did Jasper a special favor. We went out and we dug up the entire sidewalk in front of the building, and we put in a water pump so that it accumulates water and then it sprays it up with extra pressure. So now you have water pressure like you would in any skyscraper or so. So it's a bulletproof system now. It works really well. And we did that, of course, at no cost to Jasper, just to make sure he's happy as an investor with us.
Yeah, then I really appreciate that. So thank you. But with the water pressure being fixed, I felt like, okay, now I mean, there was a couple others, really small things, like, for example, a door would open and then would slam into a wall or something when there's a lot of wind. there's a bunch of other little details I remember that we fixed. But anyway, in November we were ready to go, and so we listed the apartment on on Airbnb and on all the other platforms that you list on, Patrick. So just to be clear, I decided to, at least for the time being, to let Patrick and Life Afar manage the apartment so that it doesn't cost me any time. I think it could work very well because the guys are on the ground. I know they're doing a really good job on the ground because I've seen their operations. There's always cleaning ladies available. There's always supplies, and the guys that work for Life Afar, they're very friendly. They speak good English, and so I wasn't worried about that at all. But at the same time, my goal is to make a 10% net return on this property, right? And so obviously using a property manager obviously cuts into the profit. But this is how I wanted to start out, and so let's go through the different months. So November. Started off on a very positive note because we got a reservation directly, Patrick, through your own website, I believe, right? But there was a really good reservation of over $3,000, which just for full transparency, the price that I paid for the apartment, I just looked it up. I ended transferring $139,000, which included, by the way, all the costs. The legal costs, and essentially everything was paid from that $139,000. And so if you want to make a 10% return on that, that's just under $14,000 or just over $1,100 a month. So getting a $3,000 reservation in the first month was pretty uplifting. But then what happened with that reservation?
So, well, let's just take it step by step. Yeah, we just launched your website or your apartment on our website, and of course we were excited. It was one of our premium apartments, and we're finally going out there and trying to attract some real top dollar paying guests. And we got this beautiful reservation, which was 1 month, a guy paying $3,000, and I thought it was some sort of top executive, and it was a direct booking, meaning that it came through our website. And then this young little guy shows up, and he was nice, but nothing out of this world. He seemed like a little ordinary, to put it in a simple way. And everything went well for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then for the last week of his rental, he started doing parties. He started bringing fireworks up and shooting it from the balcony. And one day when our staff came in, they noticed that 2 of the TVs were missing. And we were like, what? What happened? You got to bring the TVs back. And he said, oh, we had a PlayStation tournament at one of my friends' houses, and we didn't have enough screens, so we brought them over there. I'll bring them back tomorrow, no problem. And we gave him a few days of leniency, and the end of the contract was arriving, and he just had not brought the TVs back. And we started getting a little aggressive with him and say, what is going on? I mean, this is not allowed. And he started, sending us pictures of him, how much money he had, and I was like, what? Something is fishy here. And then at the same time, this is important to note. At the same time, across the entire organization, we manage more than 220 apartments, and we're starting to see fraudulent reservations in our system, meaning that they were all direct bookings, and they were all some of our finest apartments, and they were all for extended periods of time. And sometimes somebody would show up and enjoy the stay, and other times people would try to cancel last minute and get a refund in cash. And there's just something fishy going on. And when we finally ended up kicking Jasper's tenants out and they hadn't delivered our TVs back, I had to call Jasper and tell him something fishy is going on. And what happens is that in Colombia, the payment processor, meaning that our online payment processor for credit card on our website, they don't have a fraud detection system that is as fast as maybe PayPal or Airbnb or Booking.com has, meaning that people could actually make a reservation, show up, enjoy the stay, and then maybe 6 to 10 weeks later, we would get a notification saying that this was a fraudulent transaction. So what happened is we kicked these guests out, and 2 weeks after they left, I got a call that we'd lost the $3,000. And of course, we got a credit card dispute going on right now. Not only that, I felt responsible, so I had to buy 2 new flat screen TVs for a Jasper's apartment because I'm the operator here. I feel responsible if people steal from the apartment, at least in this kind of situation. I have to feel like I'm responsible for it. It's different if you go through Airbnb, because Airbnb, we automatically demand a $300 deposit, meaning we can always use that deposit to work in order to reimburse us in case of damages or stolen or missing items. So it's been a big mess. The first reservation was a big mess. We still got a dispute going on with the credit card company. We're hoping to at least get some of the money back. In the meantime, that first month cost me almost $600-700 because I had to go in and buy 2 new TVs for Jasper in order to make sure that he's happy, of course, and make sure that I maintain my reputation as an operator. And also because we shut down the direct bookings now, and we did that as a safety precaution. I think at a national level, we probably lost more than $30,000 or $40,000 for those 2 months that it went on, meaning that we had a ton of fraudulent reservations. We suffered a ton of damages. These young guys that showed up and enjoyed their stays in the apartments were not taking care of the properties. Some of them we had to go in and repaint. We had to, I think I actually told you, Jasper, they broke one of the chairs, and then I had 2 different chairs in your apartment. I had to go in and buy 2 new beautiful chairs for your apartment. So all in all, let's just say that we lost a lot of money on that first month. That being said, we've deactivated the direct bookings. We do everything through the more recognized OTAs now, meaning that we do Airbnb, we do VRBO, we do HomeAway, we do Booking.com, we do TripAdvisor, and so far we have not had a single issue with any of them. So it was a bouncy ride, and now it looks a lot better. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, definitely a bouncy ride. But fortunately, since November, it's been going a lot better. December, January, February, and March. Well, it's early March now, but March is actually turning out to be the best month so far, which is interesting because March is considered low season in Cali, which means that we're getting some traction on Airbnb specifically. And, because when you're starting out in Airbnb, obviously, you have to compete with the other apartments that have more reviews, etc. And so after this horrendous experience in November, essentially, we started off in December, right, on Airbnb. And since December, it's been going pretty well. And there's definitely a trend, an upward trend in the amount of the dollar amounts of reservations that we've gotten. But let me just quickly dive into the numbers and see what it looks like, right? So, like I said before, I'm looking to make a 10% net return on investment, and that's after all costs, right? So that's after management costs and maintenance, TV, electrical bills, after the fee that I pay to Patrick and Life Afar for the management work. So the goal is $13,900 for the year, which is exactly 10%. And so what I've done is, since we started renting out in August, I've divided that amount by 12 and then simply multiplied by the number of months. And that brings me to a target up and including March of $9,267. It's not completely fair because, obviously the first 3 months I rented out to my friends. Obviously those months you're not going to make as much as you would make on Airbnb. But I've kind of just, I've just included all the months to get conservative estimates. So if I'm making my target, then it's actually going a little bit better in reality, because I've not been doing Airbnb as long as I could have. But in any case, my realized profit so far is $6,254 versus a target of $9,267. So, I'm about $3,000 under target. And that's exactly the amount that we lost in November. There's still a chance that we will end up getting this money back. And if that happens, I'm actually right on targets, which is pretty awesome. I wasn't sure if I was going to make my target in the first year, right? Because obviously the first year of renting out, there's always some stuff that you have to figure out. There's you don't get as many bookings in the beginning as you get and when you have a good reputation. But even with the disaster from November, I think that those $3,000, I might be able to actually make that up in the next 4 months. So we're including March. I'm 8 out of 12 months. And I think if we get the same amount of bookings in April, May, June, and July as we've gotten in March, then we're actually going to be pretty close to hitting that target. So it's still looking pretty reasonable, even included the disaster month in November, assuming that I'm not going to see any revenue in November, which means that November was a negative month because I still have to pay electricity, I still have to pay internet and all those other expenses. What else can we share with the listeners, Patrick? I've got a whole list of questions, by the way, that I'm going to go through. But I just wanted to give Patrick an opportunity to share other things if I missed anything.
Okay, I think there's one thing that's important to note before we get to the questions is that Jasper, his apartment was sold to him with an estimate of $100 a night in revenue. And the reality is right now that for March, we're doing $117 as an average nightly rate, which is great because that means that we are exceeding expectations on the average nightly rate. It also means that we will need less occupancy in order to hit the numbers that we've been telling Jasper that we could hit. It also means that if we don't exceed the occupancy, then at least we're going to have less consumption of electricity and of water for the days that the apartment is occupied. So we estimated, I think, 60 or 65% occupancy. The reality is that with the average nightly rate that we're doing right now, we will be hitting your numbers with just about 50% occupancy, which is great. Also, Jasper, I think you should not underestimate your own little knowledge, so to speak, in this area. You called us and you told us that you wanted more pictures of the apartment, different angles. You wanted different pictures of the view. You wanted more pictures of the neighborhood, of the nightlife, of the restaurant, and we got in a professional photographer to help you out with this. And I think that has helped as well. Also, one of your recommendations was to always put captions on the pictures on your Airbnb profile, which we did. So I think all of this accumulated, plus the momentum of the 5-star reviews that we've been getting, has helped this apartment really starting to perform in March.
Right, and we've been getting pretty good reviews, have we?
Only 5 stars so far.
Only 5 stars so far, exactly. So no, that's definitely true. I think when you purchase a new property and you're starting to list on Airbnb, it's going to take a couple months before you're getting good traction. I remember my apartment in Amsterdam. I think the first 6 months, the second 6 month period, I actually made double of what I made in the first 6 months period, and that's just because when you have a unit that has like 25 5-star reviews, you can charge significantly more than when you have like 1 or 2 reviews. That's just how Airbnb works, right? And so I'm quite positive also, just like yourself, Patrick, because I know that if in the first couple months people are willing to pay $120 a night, I'm pretty positive that about 6 months from now we'll probably be able to charge $150 and maybe even a little bit higher the year after. Because there's always people that will look on Airbnb and they see an apartment that has a ton of 5-star reviews and they just don't care if it's like 120 or 150 or 180. They just want to make sure that their experience is good. And the best way for them to, the best predictor for a great experience is the number of 5-star reviews that a property has. So I'm pretty positive looking into the future. I think 50% occupancy we can pretty much reach the goal. I think we can raise the price in the future, and I think we can get that occupancy up to 70-80% as well. And once we get to those numbers, then obviously the targets are going to be blown out of the way. But let's not count our chickens until they've hatched. Let's not count. There's another expression about bears. I can't remember what it is. Do you remember that?
No, let's not shoot the bear. No, let's not sell the skin before the bear's been shot. I think that's the way.
Let's not sell the fur before the bear has been shot. That's exactly what it is.
Hi, my name is Margot, and I'm the CEO of Hostfully. We are on a mission to make local travel a lot better, and we're starting with digital guidebooks to make that happen. Using Hostfully digital guidebooks, which work great on any mobile device, on desktop and in print, you can share important property information and local recommendations with your guests. You can also save time and create a great guest experience that each traveler will appreciate. Hostfully guidebooks are very fast to make, and we've included some advanced features where you can feature your custom logo, your colors, custom categories, and essentially your brand. Please take a chance to check us out at hostfully.com.
let's go to questions. So I've got quite a few, and a lot of them are pretty interesting questions. And I'm glad that you were here, Patrick, because some of these can only be answered by you. And so there we go. Let's go to the first question. And these questions are actually submitted by Alex, who runs an amazing property in Bali, and who you probably hear from in the future, because he and I have actually been talking about some collaboration and trying some different strategies. But anyway, here's Alex's question. So the first question is, what has been your biggest barrier to purchase in Colombia, or any red flag that you are not told that you were not told, but you have to face when you're in the process? So the biggest barrier to purchase in Colombia, well, to be really honest, I didn't really have a lot of barriers, because Life Afar actually made it very easy for me. It is a pretty complicated process, I have to say. To wire money to Colombia, for example, it has to go through like a brokerage account, and even the central bank is involved, and the currency has to be exchanged. It's not as simple as wiring money from Europe to the US. And I'll give you a chance to speak on this topic, Patrick, in a second. But for me, as a customer, for me it was actually very simple. Life Afar simply provided all the documents. It was very easy because they filled in all the information already, so I just had to put the signature. I did at some point have to go to the Colombian embassy in Amsterdam. I'd say that was probably one of the biggest hassles, because you know how embassies work. Well, they don't really work. So it means like, they're almost never open, or like just a few hours a day, and you have to make an appointment, and people are really slow, all that kind of stuff. So I'd say that was a bit of a bit annoying. I had to go to that embassy, especially because I was in Taiwan when I had to sign these documents, and Taiwan doesn't have a Colombian embassy. So once I got back to Amsterdam, I was able to get all the documents done. But I think, I think getting the documents at the embassy, and then I'd say the biggest barrier was probably a mental barrier. When I bought my apartment in Amsterdam, it feels very comfortable. It feels very, very safe. I've lived in Amsterdam for years. It's my country. And I'm very confident that when I transfer money to a bank and there's a notary involved, that the property is actually going to be mine. Right now, when I transfer $140,000 to Colombia, even though the reason why I work with Life Afar is because I've known these guys since 2014. I personally know the founder and CEO, Rich Holman. Shout out to Rich Holman if he's listening. I hope you're doing well, Rich. I know the owner personally, and I've seen what these guys have done. I've seen their properties in Medellin. I've actually worked with them a bit. I've helped them a little bit with the Airbnb listings back in 2014 when I was writing my book. But still, you're transferring a lot of money to a country that you're not very familiar with, that I've spent less than 5 weeks in, and that's a scary thing to do. But I guess there's not much you can do about that. I was willing to take the gamble. First of all, because I do believe that in order to live your life well, you have to be willing to take some risks sometimes and get out of your comfort zone and do something that that can be a little bit scary. So I'd say that was the mental barrier was probably the biggest barrier that I faced. Patrick, do you have anything to comment on that?
Yes. I would like to say there are two ways of buying in Colombia. You can buy it through us, or you can do it yourself. And I agree that the mental barrier is absolutely one of the biggest barriers. But I also want to say that if you want to come here and you purchase on your own, there's a lot of hoops that you need to go through. And like you said, if you don't have an ID, you can't open a bank account. But I don't recommend you transferring money directly to the seller's account. So you would have to open a brokerage account first. Then you got to register your investment with the central bank. Every $4 or every €4 you bring into the country, or for every 1,000 you pay to the government as a financial tax. And then there's the whole hassle with the notary. Then there's the whole hassle of buying and renovating and subdividing and all those things that I don't even want to go into. So it's not like it's an easy process. But one of the things that we do at Life Afar is make it hands off. So we try to tell our investors, all you have to do is wire us the money, sign the paperwork, and tell us where do you want us to send your income to. And that's what we did with Jasper. Yeah, sure, it was a little uncomfortable. You had to take out a couple of hours of his day, go down to the notary or at the embassy and have it notarized in front of the ambassador, the document, the purchasing contract, and the rest of it I took care of. So it means I signed the contract at the notary with Jasper's power of attorney, meaning that on his behalf, I put the property in his name. And at the same time, he authorized a couple of documents that meant that I could do short-term rentals in the building, meaning that I have to register it with the Ministry of Tourism. And of course, I helped him legalize his payments here in the country. We helped him open the brokerage account. So there's a couple of steps involved. It wasn't like super hard for us because we do it every day, but for an outsider and somebody who doesn't speak Spanish, yes, it can be intimidating. It can be a challenge. I do feel like for an outsider investing through Life Afar, the way that Jasper did it, it was fairly easy and transparent. And of course, you can elaborate on that, Jasper. But one of our objectives as a company is make it as easy as possible for foreigners to invest in Colombia.
Well, and that's also why I chose to go this route. Of course, I know that if I go to Colombia by myself and I find a property myself, I buy it myself, I do everything myself, obviously I'm going to save a bunch of money. But at the same time, I'm buying a ton of hassle, and I like to keep things, as hassle-free as possible while still achieving my goals in terms of profitability, right? So if I can make an investment and I get 10% profitability without any hassle and without having to do any work on it, then I'm pretty happy with that. But of course, the future will tell. But like Patrick says, on my end, it was not very much hassle. And when I hear Patrick speaking, I'm glad I didn't have to do all those things. But let's go to the next question. Next question is, what if Life Afar loses the license? So, Patrick, how does it work exactly? Because does the license, the short-term rental license that you need in Colombia to rent out, does it apply to my little apartment, or does it apply to you as a company, as a Life Afar as a company?
Okay, so there are two aspects to it. One thing is when you have a residential building, meaning that you have an apartment in a residential building, then you need to have a homeowners association rule that allows for short-term rentals. So the first thing, remember, when we bought the building was to change the homeowners association rules, and we changed it such that it takes a 100% vote to change those rules. That means that if there are 4 apartments in the building, 1 or 2 or 3 owners even cannot go in and change the homeowners association rules to prohibit the short-term rentals. This is very important. Okay, because Jasper, he purchased this apartment with the intention to rent on short contracts. And if he can't do that, well, then he kind of loses the objective. So that was number one. The second deal is that you have to register with the Ministry of Tourism. It's called Registro Nacional de Turismo. So it means a register of national tourism. You need to have this register for your apartment, and you need to comply with certain aspects. And can you lose this register or this license? Certainly you can. And it means that you need to have the fire squad out. They need to make sure that there's a fire extinguisher. You need to have the people out from the health department to make sure that we fumigate the apartment. I mean, there's certain aspects that we need to comply with, but it's nothing out of this world. And then, of course, us as an operator, I need to have the same license, the same RNT that allows me to administrate vacation rentals. Again, yeah, there's a couple of hoops I need to jump through. It's nothing out of this world. Everybody who works in tourism needs to have this license, meaning whether you administrate a vacation rental, whether you have a tour operating agency, whether you sell airline tickets, you need to have the RNT, Registro Nacional de Turismo. And like I said, there's a few things that you need to comply with, but it is nothing out of this world. And I do not expect that we will lose this license. One of the reasons they do this, of course, was in order to formalize the industry a little bit, meaning that in a lot of residential communities, they were fed up with the informality of the short-term rentals. And also they wanted to make sure that the tourists that come to Colombia have a good experience, that they stay in a safe place, that they stay in a place that's, health-wise, taken care of, meaning that we have clean bed sheets. We do take care of the cockroaches. We do take care of the maintenance. We do make sure that the water tank and the water pump is maintained. Just all of these little things that we need to take care of. We make sure that there's emergency lighting in the hallway so that if there's an energy shortage and a lightning strikes into the building and there's a fire, well, then you can still find the fire exits. I mean, there's small, simple steps that we need to take in order to comply. Do I see ourselves losing that license? No. But if we do lose it, that means we do go informal and we would not be operating legally. So I hope this answers the question.
Okay, so the short answer to the question is, what if you guys lose the license? Then essentially we can't do short-term rentals anymore, right?
Yeah, that means I'm out of business. I need to find another job.
And so the question is, what would I do? I would have to find another operator, or I would have to get the license myself, or I run it illegally, or I start renting it out long-term. I guess that's the alternative. When I choose these properties, one of the rules for me to decide if I'm going to buy something or not, one of the most important rules is, what's the alternative? What if for some reason I cannot do Airbnb anymore? I mean, who knows? Maybe Colombian government will, completely prohibit short-term rentals. I mean, anything can happen, right? And so the alternative is, alternative number one is I rent it out long-term. Would people want to rent this place long-term? Well, I'm pretty sure because, I hadn't even left my apartment, or my friends were already asking me like, hey, can we please rent it? And obviously, I'm probably not going to make that 10%, but I'll make like 7% or maybe 8%. So I'm still not completely screwed. And then the other alternative, of course, is, what if I can always decide to move in myself, right? I mean, if I have to live in my penthouse in Cali in Colombia for let's say like a couple of years or something, or maybe even longer, then that's not the end of the world. I will have to party a little bit less than I did last time I was there, because otherwise I won't survive for long. But still, that's always an option. At least I have a place to live. If the world falls apart, I can still go to Colombia. I can live in my penthouse, and I can probably live off $500 a month for maybe $1,000 a month. You can still comfortably live in Colombia. So it's almost like a worst case scenario alternatives as well. All right, let's go to the next question. How confident are you to resell quick with a profit? Well, I really didn't buy this to sell it quickly. I would like to keep it for as long as I don't need the money, I guess. And I haven't invested all my money into these properties, because I think if you're buying a property, it's a lot of research, a lot of time, a lot of investment. And so you really don't want to sell it unless you're a house flipper or something. I wouldn't want to sell it for at least 5, probably 10, and possibly even longer. I mean, it's a great property, so why would I sell it? As long as it makes a decent profit, I won't be looking at selling it. Next question: Does Life of Our Orphan guarantee if they lose the license? I don't think you do, do you?
No, there is no guarantee that we will not lose our license.
I mean, like I said before, you have to be willing to take a little bit of risk. All right, let's see. Next question.
And this is not a little mom and pop operation, so to speak. I mean, we're 120 employees now, so that means 120 employees would go out of business. So that would be serious issues for us. It's something we take very, very, very serious, to operate legally and to do it right and make sure that we have good investors, and also to make sure we take good care of their properties. And of course, in order to do that, we take very good care of our guests. So it is a full circle, so to speak.
You paid cash. Why this strategy when you could have had the same return with a mortgage elsewhere? So that's a really good question, and that's something that I looked into. Here's the issue. I can get a mortgage. I cannot even get a mortgage in Holland, because I walk into a bank and they ask me, well, what's your job? And I say, well, I run a podcast, and I wrote a book, and do some other stuff on the side, a little bit of hustling here, hustling there. Bank employee will look at me and be like, what? Then he'll say like, can I see your salary, your income statements for the last couple months? And, then I have an apartment in Colombia and in the Philippines and in Thailand, and do some coaching here, do some stuff there. I mean, it's a mess. But essentially the answer is no, you do not get a mortgage. So I can't get a mortgage. Now, I don't know if I would be able to get a mortgage in Colombia, but it doesn't really matter because the rates are so high. I don't know what they are. Probably like 10, 11, 12, maybe higher. And so obviously there's no point getting a mortgage if the mortgage rate is higher than the profitability that you're targeting, right?
Well, if you're a foreigner here and you don't have a steady income stream, which is the problem you have, then you won't get a loan in Colombia. And also your income, for instance, I'm a Danish citizen, but I live in Colombia as a resident, and even though I have an income in Denmark, they don't care about that income. They want to see that your income is in Colombia. And even if you get approved, I mean, my neighbor pays 1.5% a month. That's 19% a year for his mortgage. And of course, you can be a better client. You can get it down to maybe 9, 10, 11, 12%. But still, it takes away the profitability. Colombia, from my perspective, is a cash buyer's market in order to be really attractive. Unless you're one of the lucky few who has a line of credit, or maybe you can do a home equity loan at home. So let's say you have a house at home, you owe $200,000 on it, but it's a $500,000 property. So maybe you could do a home equity loan, meaning you pull out $100,000 or $200,000, and then you would pay 3 or 4% maybe interest on that part of the home equity loan, and then you can use that money to invest in Colombia. That would be the way to go. But don't come to Colombia looking for a loan unless you have an established income here and unless you're willing to pay insane interest rates.
Yeah, and so the real way to make money is to borrow in the US or in Europe at 3, 4, 5%, and then use that money to purchase in Colombia. But that's not possible, I don't think. I don't think there's any bank in the US or in Europe that will give you a mortgage and then will allow you to invest that money outside the country. I haven't heard of that. If you do know an option there, then please email me, and I'll happily borrow $1 million and go invest it in some countries around the world. All right, let's see. Next question: how do you finance your other investments? So, all the free properties that I bought, I've paid with cash, and that cash came from the sale of my apartment in Amsterdam. And the last question is, overall, do you stick to a rule best practice when it comes to investing cash? Like, for example, never more than X percentage of available cash assets. I guess for me, the rule when I'm investing cash is one of the big rules is the one I've already mentioned, right? It's like I look at, okay, is there an opportunity to do short-term rentals right now? Is there a possibility? If yes, is that possibility likely to be taken away by the local authorities in the future? So in Colombia's case, they've already established a pretty strict short-term rental regulations, right? And so, I don't really expect it to get much stricter than this. You already have to have a license. You have the building, the homeowner association. The ministry is already involved so much that I can't see it getting much stricter. But if I were to, invest in a city, for example, somewhere like in California or elsewhere in the US, and there's no regulations yet, well, you gotta think, what about in next year or 2 years or 3 years from now? Right, because I think a lot of places in the Western world are following the examples that have been set by Amsterdam, Paris, London, but in the US also look at Santa Monica, look at San Francisco, look at New York. All these cities are cracking down on Airbnb and short-term rentals. So if you invest in a place where there's no regulations yet, you have to wonder how long is that going to stay that way, right? So if you're investing in a place where regulations are already in place and you're still able to do it, then that, to me at least, that it feels a lot safer. So that's one rule. And then, like I said before, what are the alternatives? Like, could I be renting this long-term to long-term renters? Would I enjoy staying there myself? Those are some other considerations. And then the other rules has to do with profitability, right? Just analyzing the market, thinking about who's your target audience going to be, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, as a general rule or best practice, I would never buy something that I don't want to stay in myself. I would never buy something if I'm not quite positive that short-term renting is going to be a legal option in the near future. Yeah, I guess those are the main rules, I guess. Okay, so let's go to, I think there's a few more questions on my blog. And by the way, if you want to read my whole analysis of why I bought this property, the research that I did, go to getpaidforyourpad.com and click on the blog, and then scroll down a bit. Actually, on the top blog right now is actually about my property in the Philippines in Carabao Island, which is opening up in April next month. So that's quite exciting. There was quite a bit of a delay there. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a blog post, why I bought a penthouse in Cali, Colombia to rent on Airbnb. And then if you click on it, you'll see that there's a lot of information. I've updated it recently, and I'm going to update it after I publish this podcast as well. So you'll be able to see all the information, all the numbers, and etc. that I've shared. So you can all review that in the blog post. The first question by Daniel, I've been looking at FAR's site. Are prices negotiable? And the second question, if you did want to use a mortgage, do they help with that? Oh, those are the two questions. So are prices negotiable, and can they help getting a mortgage? I think we've already answered the mortgage question. It's not really, you don't really want to get a mortgage in Colombia. That's the bottom line. So are prices negotiable, Patrick?
Well, our sales prices are not negotiable, to be honest. And of course, there's a profit calculator for us in that, meaning that you could have probably saved yourself maybe $20,000, $30,000 by coming down here and doing it by yourself. That being said, in order to find a building where you could do short-term rentals, you would have had to buy the entire building by yourself. You would have had to subdivide it. You would have to renovate it. You would have to furnish or buy something from scratch. But also having that margin, meaning that I earn a little bit of a profit, means that, hey, Jasper, your 2 TVs got stolen. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Hey, Jasper, your water pressure's not okay. Hey, Jasper, I'll take care of it. So, I mean, that leaves me a margin. I eat too. I sleep too. I also have 2 kids. So, no. The prices at Life Afar are not negotiable. If you do come to Colombia and look to buy your own property, of course they're negotiable. So I hope this answers the question.
I think it certainly does. So next question, is it hard to get a mortgage in Colombia? So we covered that already. If I was wondering if FAR also has some property opportunities in other cities in Colombia, such as Cartagena, Medellin, Bogota, or are you mainly based in Cali? So I've got my only apartment in Colombia is in Cali, but I do think, Patrick, I'll let you answer this, but I think there's other places where you guys have opportunities too, no?
Yes, we operate in 4 markets in Colombia, so Cali is by no means our only market. We have 2 business models, meaning that we have the one we call TIP, turnkey investment property. That is a unit like the one Jasper bought, meaning that he owns the unit 100% outright. He could choose to live there full-time, part-time, none of the time. He could choose to have us administrate it or to administrate it himself or outsource it to a third party. So we got 20-something apartments in Cali. 4 of them are the TIPs, meaning that they have an owner. The other ones are crowd-funded projects or third-party properties. And some of our third-party properties includes my apartment. Some of the crowd-funded projects includes like apartment hotels. So we buy a full building and we turn it into Airbnb units. And instead of owning a unit in your name, you own a percentage of the entire project. And so we got 20-something apartments in total in Cali. We got 100-something in Medellin, which is our biggest market in Colombia. We got 60-something apartments in Bogota, and we got 20-something apartments in Medellin. In Cartagena. And overall, we got about 100 apartments undergoing renovation right now in Colombia. Then the 5th city or the 5th destination we're opening has been in San Juan, Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. And we've just signed and we just crowdfunded a project of about $16 million there, which we will begin renovations of shortly. So 5 cities all in all in Latin America right now and looking to expand.
Awesome. So that probably answers that question. Let's see. I think the other questions have already been answered. I think we've covered quite a lot, haven't we? It's been over an hour. So if you do have any other questions, then feel free to shoot me an email at jasper@getpaidforyourpet.com, or go to getpaidforyourpet.com, go to the blog section and find the blog post, Why I Bought a Penthouse in Cali, Colombia. And there you probably find an answer to your questions as well, because it's a pretty extensive blog post. Patrick, anything else that we need to talk about, or should we leave it at this?
No, I mean, I think one thing I wanted to mention when you talked about what happens if I can't do my short-term rentals in the future, I think it's important to understand that you have you paid $139,000. I mean, what would you get for $139,000 in Amsterdam? A studio, maybe a parking lot? I don't know. What do you get, Jasper?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much nothing. Yeah, maybe a space to park your car. I think a small studio, maybe you can get a tiny studio, but I doubt it. I think studios in Amsterdam probably start around 200, maybe 250.
And would that be the most attractive area of town?
No, definitely not.
So there you go. You paid $139,000. So even in the worst case that we should lose this license to do short-term rentals, you still have a top floor, beautiful 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment with a view all over the city, located in the best neighborhood. I mean, I think that, no, you don't buy this apartment and flip it the next day and earn a profit, because then you would have to do it yourself. But to hold on as a long-term investment, Cali is still one of the most underappreciated real estate markets in the world. And I think it's important for people to understand that. And even if you want to combine that with a lifestyle choice, meaning coming here and spending some time, I mean, we have amazing nightlife. We have beautiful people. We have amazing food. I mean, the restaurant scene is just growing and growing and getting more interesting every single time. We're surrounded by nature, so we got beautiful mountains. We're close to the Pacific coast where you can surf and see the whales. And this is a downhill biking destination. This is a top bird watching destination in the world. And this is a salsa, destination for people who like to dance and have fun. As soon as more people come and get their eyes up for what a beautiful destination this is, prices are going to move in the right direction, and you're not going to regret having paid $139,000 for your unit.
Well, that's one thing I guess I can comment on as well is, when I buy a property, I don't buy it because I expect price appreciation. I simply look at, how much do I think I can make? I want to make 10% after cost. And, if I think that's doable, then, from a profitability perspective, that is then an investment that qualifies. But I don't like to gamble on house prices in general. I know a lot of people who seem to think that, buying a house is an investment because the price is always going up. And, if you look at the last 20, 30 years or so, or maybe even longer, over the long term, prices do tend to go up. But on the shorter term, that's not the case at all. I mean, obviously, if you would have bought a house in 2007 somewhere in the US or in Europe, then there's a good chance that 5 years later you were still lower than where you bought it, right? So, yeah, maybe in the very long term, there's prices tend to go up. I mean, there's inflation as well, of course, but I don't like to gamble at that. But of course, I do think about it. I do consider it, right? And so one of the reasons that I think there's a lot of upside in emerging markets when it comes to real estate is because of the mortgage market, right? In Colombia, with the mortgage rates being so high and the restrictions are so strict, it's so hard to get a mortgage there. That means that, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of upside, right? What if that mortgage market develops and turns into a mortgage market like you see in Europe or the US? I mean, it's going to be a while before it gets that mature, but surely if mortgage prices go down a bit and the restrictions go down a bit, then there's a lot of room for upside there. Whereas in Europe and the US and some other developed markets in Asia, you look at the real estate prices versus what you can rent it for, and you look at the mortgage rates. I mean, how much room is there left when you can borrow at like 3% or 4% for 10, 20, 30 years. I don't see those mortgage rates going down much more than that. It tells me that, and I mean, I do see them go up, by the way. I do think there's a reasonable chance that mortgage rates will go much higher, which means that house prices will come down, right? So in the Western world and the developed world, I do see a risk, a downside risk. And whereas in the emerging markets, I see more of an upside risk. Now, of course, I could be totally wrong, and there's currency exchange risks involved as well. And of course, none of any of this, what I'm saying, none of this is financial advice, by the way, of course. So, do your own research, make up your own mind. But that's just my opinion. All right. So I think we've been talking for a long time. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're pretty busy with managing all those apartments there in Cali in Colombia. So good luck with everything. And let's hope that 6 months from now we can paint a much rosier picture of the results as well.
My pleasure, Jasper. Always good talking to you, and I hope to see you in Cali soon again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Patrick. And thanks to the listeners. And next week and the weeks after that, every week there's going to be a podcast. I've got a lot of recordings in the can now, so I'll make sure not to miss a single week. So thanks for listening, and until next time.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.